Their journey will not be in one straight line, and there will definitely be some unexpected bumps and changes that are along the way, but that's okay. That's a normal part of your careers journey. Your career doesn't have to be a set path. It doesn't have to be a set journey. You don't need to know exactly what you are going to do for life. With students and with parents, because parents are a big part of the engagement, they're quite shocked, at the opportunities that are available now, because the world of careers has changed so much. It's about overcoming fears. It's about trying things that are new. You need to test and try and use your senses and go with your gut feeling. And work happiness is now something which we really talk about and we explore.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me in Season 2 of Hoda's Career Info, your career literacy program where I seek to explore career answers and increase everyone's knowledge about the great work done by the career development community. How do I accomplish this? One interview at a time. I am your host, Hoda. I look forward to another season of career chats with inspirational guests and insightful feedback from you, the audience. Ready to meet this week's guest? My guest today is a career services innovator, and her name is Julie Poppleton. Julie works as a director of careers for Terrace Academy, a secondary school in the UK. She is a Level 7 careers leader and a Level 6 qualified careers practitioner. Her leadership responsibilities and expertise include employer, stakeholder, and community partnership engagement, including parents and families, of course. She is a passionate advocate of career development with various important commitments to boards and communities. Julie is also part of Youth Employment UK, supporting the publishing of Careers Education, a program which was nationally acclaimed as an outstanding careers program. She publishes articles offering parental advice. And finally, Julie is an eager keynote speaker, having spoken at a range of local, national, and virtual events. I am certain that you are going to be amazed by Julie's innovative, or as she likes to call them, crazy career ideas. Hello and welcome, Julie Poppleton, to Hoda's Career Info. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with me and talk about careers. I like to talk about career professionals' background because the aim is always to educate in that how we came to what we do and why we do what we do. So the first question is, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. So it's very varied. It's very mixed. It certainly has been an unexpected journey, the way that my career has unfolded. But I think that's a great story to share with young people that I meet, that actually their journey will not be in one straight line, and there will definitely be some unexpected bumps and changes that are along the way, but that's okay. That's a normal part of your careers journey. So with myself, my original aspiration when I was at school and met with my careers advisor, I wanted to go into mental health. I wanted to be a mental health nurse practitioner. And sadly, my experience of careers advice at school was not very good. It was a 5-minute meeting. It was literally, I was given a leaflet. There was no exploration. There were no open-ended questions. There was no getting to know or understand me as a person and my skills and why had I got those aspirations. and I couldn't do my mental health nursing training until I was 18. And at that time, I decided to go into an apprenticeship in retail. So I started off doing that, but I actually clearly very quickly really loved working with people. I really loved giving advice. I loved, so it was a clothes shop that I worked in, and I loved the empowerment. I loved giving that advice, putting a smile on people's face, making them feel good about themselves. And after that, I then decided to actually go into optics. So I went to go and work for an optician's. It was a high street optical chain in the UK. And they put me through all of their in-house training. So I was trained to become a contact lens practitioner. I became a technician. So I was actually making people's glasses. But my favourite part of the job was, again, it was that face-to-face. It was the interaction with people, and it was, again, about making them feel good about themselves, particularly people that had got very strong prescriptions where they'd got very thick, sort of lenses that were in the glasses. It was just beautiful to see that transformation in them and just give them that advice and see that smile on their face when they'd come and collect their glasses and then walk out very, very happy customers. But I also knew, I was there for 10 years, and then as I got to in my early 30s, my son at that time was 3. So although I loved what I was doing, I'd been successful, I'd worked up to management level, the salary was not particularly very well paid, and I also felt that I could achieve more, but I wasn't sure what else could I do, because I'd never had that careers advice and guidance at a younger age. So I actually had some advice and guidance then as an adult, to see, well, actually, what else could I do? I've worked in retail. Does that mean I can only work in retail? And that was a much better experience of the adult careers advice and guidance. And that was the first time that I saw that I had got transferable skills, and all of the customer service and all of the face-to-face interaction and that advice and guidance could be used in other sectors and in other roles. So that really empowered me, and that really made me feel, actually, I, am really valuable. I can apply for other jobs, even though I might not necessarily have the skills that they're looking for. And that's when I started applying for jobs. And I saw a job advertised with the Career Service, and that originally was working in a career centre, which was a drop-in clinic for anyone of the public to go and get information and book appointments to see a careers advisor. But on the front line, we were then doing those pre-assessments, some of those psychometric tests, using some of the software and the computer to try and identify perhaps careers they might be interested in, or paths or routes, and that was then passed on to the careers advisor. And then part of my experience was shadowing young people in schools and working with the careers advisors in schools. And there was a particular careers advisor. It was a very disadvantaged school. There were a lot of students who were not enjoying being in a school environment. There were a lot of sort of low-level behavioural issues. There were issues with attainment, with aspirations. And the careers advisor who worked in that school was, I can only describe, she was like watching a rainbow sort of appear in front of my eyes. I was just absolutely mesmerised by what she was weaving her magic with those young people. And for me, that was a really defining moment in terms of wanting to pursue my career further, including in the careers sector. And I thought, I want to work with young people, and that's the kind of impact that I want to, sort of have with them. So I then actually moved on, believe it or not, from the career sector, because one of the organisations we worked with, they worked with young offenders, and they also worked with adults who were long-term unemployed as well. And so I was really interested in working with the long-term adults about their stories and how that happened, and what had their aspirations been when they were younger, and why were they no longer there, or could I kind of support them in bringing that passion back and that motivation and that drive. And also working with young offenders, I really enjoyed the challenge again of that, and working with a lot of the barriers and the issues, and seeing could I have an impact on working with some of our most disadvantaged young people. And again, I absolutely loved it. That organisation then put me through a range of qualifications, from drug and alcohol qualifications to counselling qualifications. So their CPD and their training was extremely supportive of that. And again, I was on a roll. So there was a homelessness organisation we were working for. They had just secured money through the lottery, and they wanted to open up a brand new education centre, and they wanted a programme then to be written and delivered to their homeless residents who aged between 16 and 24. And again, for a lot of their homeless residents, they had all had previous bad experiences of education. And for a lot of them, school had not worked out, college had not worked out, they'd not been and had been able to retain any of their options and courses. So I decided, okay, I would love that. I would love to come along. So I started with them, and I actually then wrote and developed my own education program, which was called First Steps. And I also felt that that could be offered out to a wider community, because when I'd worked with young offenders, we also worked with young people that had been excluded from school, because again, that environment just didn't fit their learning style, their learning environment. And I said to the organisation I worked for that I felt we could reach out to schools, and that we could also work with some of those young people, but before they got to that point of being excluded, so we could look and try and see, was there shorter programs that we could do to try and prevent them actually being excluded. And that's what happened. And again, they put me through qualifications. I did my level 4 in careers advice and guidance. I also then started to get a first teaching qualification. So I went through something in this country that's called Petals and Dettles, which is preparing to teach in the lifelong learning sector. And then I was headhunted, and that was for a local school who had got a behavioural management unit, and they wanted me again to work with their students from the age of 11, because they felt that, again, working with students from a much earlier age, they felt that if they could raise aspirations, if they could get really interested in careers and start to get work experience and engagement with employers, that would also help enhance and understand the importance of education and the opportunities that could give some of their students. So again, I was with those for a few years, and then I completed my teaching qualifications. And then there was an organisation, I don't know if you're aware of, that were called Connections, that were in the UK. So they were the national career service provider, and they were recruiting to put people through then their degree in careers advice and guidance as a careers practitioner. So I actually went back to Connections 10 years after working for them for the first time. And they then put me through the level 6 careers advice and guidance practitioner qualification. And because I had worked in so many different sectors and with a wide range of groups of people, we were giving caseloads, and they tended to give me perhaps young people that were, as I say, really struggling. That was where I found my expertise. That was where I found that I could engage with those harder to reach students. So I tended to be the one that was perhaps going into our crews, our short stay schools, our children that were being educated from home, you know, so for example, or again, if it was older students, because with Connections, they were contracted to look after young people up until they were 19. So again, I tended to have caseloads of those that were the hardest to help and engage and try and get them re-engaged in some form of education or training. And then the one school that I came to was Terrace Academy. This is where I used to come 2 days a week as their careers advisor. And what, of course, then happened in the UK, the Connections funding from the government, careers funding was completely disbanded by our government. So there was no longer any funding that was available. And schools had then got to choose if they would have a careers advisor at all, if they were going to employ one, if they were going to use a local service to commission to bring somebody in, if they were going to use somebody in their own schools that wasn't qualified, wasn't trained, wasn't experienced, you know, to give careers advice. So across the UK, it was very, very fragmented with the impact of what happened. And so the school that I was working at, they had got quite a few people who were coming up to retirement. So their careers coordinator was coming up to retirement. Their work experience coordinator was retiring. They knew that they'd got to pay for careers advice and guidance, but they wanted a choice about who they wanted to do that for them. And the what was left of the career service, because I was then surrounded by colleagues who were just being made redundant, you know, one after the other, and it was just awful to be in that situation and to hear just those phone calls that were happening around me, and to see my colleagues, you know, sort of being told that they'd got to leave. You know, I described it as being a call, really, of that profession. It was really heartbreaking to be around. And the school wanted to have someone who they knew and who they trusted. So they actually approached me to see if I would be interested in applying for a full-time job with them, where it would be doing the being their careers advisor, but also offering a lot of pastoral support to students, because again, the other cuts to the UK were with our youth services providers. So a lot of the counselling, a lot of the behavioural management, a lot of pastoral support, the funding had been lost or had completely gone. So that was where the school then recruited me directly to come and work for them in a full-time post. So that was 8 years ago. And that obviously brings me to where I am now, you know, sort of 8 years on. And of course, there's been huge changes in the world of careers since then in our country, so that now I'm also the careers leader for the whole of school. So I look after the careers education to make sure that's embedded into all of our subjects, you know, and with all of our teachers, all of our staff. So the role itself has changed hugely over the last sort of 8 years, really. So that's been my career journey. You probably understand now why I said it was a little bit unexpected. But as I say to so many students, it really did start with that careers advice and guidance interview I had as an adult, where I became much more aware of those transferable skills. And that's the one piece of advice that I give to so many students, that actually your career doesn't have to be a set path. It doesn't have to be a set journey. You don't need to know exactly what you're going to do for life, because whatever you do, you will get skills from that you can retrain, you can go into a different career. And of course, there are so many opportunities and ways that you can do that now, whether that's a vocational route, a technical route, an academic route. And with students and with parents, because parents are a big part of the engagement, you know, from my strategy, they're quite shocked, you know, at the opportunities that are available now, because the world of careers has changed so much, hasn't it? And I think that's the other thing, you know, with careers. I think when I came into it, I almost felt like it had really got to be given a revamp, because careers, I thought, you know, you would talk to people and they would perceive that to be actually something that was quite boring and something that was sort of outdated. And I really felt, but this is your future. This should be really exciting. And the way that we deliver careers and careers education can actually be really innovative, and it can be exciting, and we can inspire young people in completely different ways. So I know that a lot of my ideas by a lot of my careers colleagues when I first came into sort of this sector, I think they thought, oh yeah, they weren't quite sure where I was coming from with a lot of my ideas, but once they saw and they came and observed and then supported with a lot of the sessions I was delivering. And I'll give you an example. So things like the bush tucker trials from I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I decided that we could implement that in careers lessons, and I actually made 3 boxes that were covered in ants and slugs and snails and rats and snakes, and students had to be blindfolded to and then put their hands inside the boxes to guess sort of what was in there. So a lot of my colleagues were saying, what on earth has that got to do with careers? So I was saying to them, because actually it's about overcoming fears. It's about trying things that are new. It's about, you need to research, you need to look deeper into things, and don't presume that because you can see a picture of a rat or a snake or a maggot that's on the outside of a box, that doesn't actually mean that that's what's inside it. You need to test and try and use your senses and go with your gut feeling about things. So it was I know that a lot of my ideas were quite revolutionary, really, to sort of the world of careers, and they were then adapted and they've been shared as good practice sort of since then.
Well, I love your passion, and I could tell. I asked you one question, and now you're gonna keep talking, and I this is why I asked you to be my guest on the show. I know, though I don't know you very well from your post, that your passion for careers is there, and I'm glad you were able to show it in that. I asked about your background, and I'm going to take you a little bit to that because it showed that while you made it sound so, it just happened and I went from one to A to B, you were actually doing a lot of reflection and asking yourself questions, which is typically what I tell and what we want our clients or students to be doing, is asking themselves these questions. And so despite going to that part of of your background, is what advice would you give to young people or to their parents and caregivers right now today because of COVID and post-COVID? I guess whether we're done with it or not, we'll have to find out. But during these times, who are probably uncertain about their future and not sure where to go.
Yeah, and you're right. We have obviously seen an impact of COVID. So increasingly mental health, that's not just obviously locally, that's nationally and globally where we've seen an impact of mental health on young people. But I'm also experiencing some positives of COVID. So I would say I've seen a huge amount of resilience as well. So that's one thing that I said to young people, that actually quite often, an employer might ask for an example in an interview of where could they show resilience. And my goodness me, the pandemic, there couldn't be to me a better example of that, where we were all isolated, we were at home, they were having to learn online, they were having to use new technology that they hadn't before. Even having access to devices and having to share some of those with parents and their siblings. And I said to them, actually, look at the positive, look at the resilience that you can show, that you have come through this, and you can really use this to your advantage. And also a great deal of entrepreneurs that have come through, because again, you mentioned that word reflection, and it was a great period of reflection for a lot of our young people. And you mentioned their parents, because what I was seeing is that for parents, they realised that they were not achieving work happiness. So for those that are about to return to work, a lot of them realised, actually, I didn't know how stressed I was. I didn't know how anxious I was. I didn't realise I hadn't got the work-life balance I wanted to. actually I can achieve more than this. I want to upskill. Can I change career? Where can I get careers advice from? And so actually at home, for a lot of our young people, they were having these conversations with their siblings, with their parents, and work happiness is now something which we really talk about and we explore as part of their careers interviews. And it's something they are definitely able to reflect on as a result of COVID, because they can see actually what is important to me when I'm looking at a career. And they are starting to look at the hours, the work-life balance, the job satisfaction. So that's been something really positive, as I say, for both parents and students. So I would say the resilience, the entrepreneurship, as I say, we had some students that set up online, some of their own online businesses, where they were operating and working from home. So it has been using those ideas and sharing it with other students. So those that had a really tough time, where their mental health was impacted upon, where they found it hard to look back and remember any positives, it's about sharing those good stories as well.
I truly appreciate your positive spin on COVID, because we always think of it and then we start to count the negatives and I appreciate your positive spin on it and how everybody can actually look at it and gain from it. You mentioned first steps, and you are in a position where you can change things now. What are your plans or hopes or the ideas going through your mind? Because you do come up with ideas and you push them, and I am very proud of you for 2022.
So same as everybody else, our careers education and careers advice and guidance had to be delivered virtually and online for the last 18 months. So that has definitely had an impact with regard to the knowledge and awareness. And I'm really seeing that in students that I'm interviewing now. Normally we have huge levels of events, of offsite activities, of employers that come in, employability, mock interviews, CV writing, university visits. We have competitions. There's so many different things normally that we would have done that we just haven't been able to do, or that we've had to deliver virtually. And the impact of that, some students, the same as with their virtual learning, it wasn't something that they, perhaps engage well with. So it's not been effective, and it's left a lot of gaps. So therefore, the planning for this year, we're really hoping to try and get back to business as usual and start to introduce some of those events and activities and projects and competitions. So we started off, so usually I organised our last big careers event 2 years ago. And for most schools or colleges, a careers expo is perhaps in the afternoon, a couple of hours, 30 or 40 exhibitors. But I felt I wanted to do something which had much more impact, because again, when I spoke to students and when I evaluated the impact, a lot of them, it was about getting as many free bags and pens and pencils and rubbers as they could. They were not having those meaningful conversations. So when I said to them, but what did you actually talk about? What questions did you ask? What have you found out? What opportunities does that employer offer? What entry requirements is that university asking for? Those conversations hadn't taken place. So 2 years ago, I wanted to do something more about that, and I organised a careers expo. But again, it was very much about inviting the families to that and inviting the parents to that, so that they could see what opportunities were there for the students, but also for themselves. So it was looking at raising family aspirations and looking at actually apprenticeships are something that can be done for adults and parents as well. So as well as the expos, there were lots of different workshops and there were lots of different have a go activities. So again, my feedback to the employers was actually, we don't just want you to come along with a stand and some leaflets. We want this to be really interactive. So our Careers Expo, we actually had 160 exhibitors across our whole school site. and we had 2,000 people that actually attended that event. But it was very interactive. So we had got a mobile hospital, we had a mobile zoo. So they were doing animal handling. We had got cooking going on. We'd got a live music venue that was going on. They were recording with cameras. They were doing videography. We'd got art. We'd got interactive dolls. There was scalextrics. There were bricklaying. There were welding. We got cabin crew who were kind of doing their typical instructions for what they do on an aeroplane and back. So it was honestly, it was just absolutely incredible. The buzz and the hive and the feedback from what people achieved from that was so much more than anything we'd done before. So unfortunate, sorry, go on. We back to ask
I
the
was
question.
going to say congratulations on the success of the expo, and I was going to say, are you hoping to do it again?
That's what I'm hoping to do again. So, you know, as we're getting back to normal, I did a small one a couple of weeks ago, but that was about 40 exhibitors, you know, that came. But again, it was just good to get people back in, seeing our students and our parents and employers and educators just all interacting. And that was just fabulous. So I think the other one might be a while before we can do something like that again, but that's definitely the plan.
That's very unique and very creative. And yeah, I wish you best of luck in doing it again soon. You used a lot of words in your first response that to me reflect what many of the career terms that I value. Part of the show is to ask you, what would be your career term if you were to choose one, and how would you describe it?
A career term, as in how would I describe myself as a professional, or a career term that would reflect the work that's done?
I will let you decide on that, because as a professional, I do want your opinion for sure, because you have loads of experience, but also perhaps how do you apply it in the work you do as well?
Okay. So I think for me, absolutely everything that I do as a careers practitioner, as you said, there are so many different terms that we could use, you know, and as you said, some of them I've already mentioned, whether that's meaningful, whether that's empowering, whether it's informing, advising. But I think for me, it has to come back to the one thing, and for me, that's about aspirations, and for me, that is so important. And I think it's also, you know, I've had some really good discussions with this with fellow careers colleagues and also on social media, because I think there's an argument there that there's very often the terminology that's used about high aspirations. But actually, how do you determine what is a high aspiration for someone? Because there is the perception that a high aspiration should be medicine, or it should be law, or it should be, you know, sort of, professional careers that are going to require high levels of academic commitment. But a lot of the families that I've worked with and a lot of the students, for some of those, there could be generations of those where there has been worklessness. And so if I had a student that was to say to me that actually they only wanted a part-time job and that wanted to be at their local supermarket, some people would perceive that to be a low aspiration. But actually, I think that's a high aspiration. So I think aspirations are very, very open to interpretation. And I think, you know, they all need to be encouraged and celebrated. And, you know, we need to have some equality and inclusivity for that. A high aspiration is not just about medicine or law. You know, it needs to be taken into context.
Absolutely an important word, and I love how you highlighted the importance of understanding that the background of every person matters and how they can move forward and what kind of aspirations they can have. Well, these were all the questions I had for you, Julie. Was there anything else you wanted to add, something you wished I had asked you about but I didn't, before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. I'm honoured that you did reach out and ask me. As you said, I'm really passionate about careers, so I'm always very, very happy to talk talk about it. No problem at all. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I picked up your passion from your posts on LinkedIn, and I didn't even know you, but I needed to talk to you because I felt your passion from your posts. And now today on this interview, you also proved me right. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me and Julie Poppleton in this episode of Hoda's Career Info 2022. Always reflecting on her own career path, Julie's innovative ideas in the career services field are inspirational for many of us supporting young people in our work. What impact would you like to accomplish in your own line of work? You can connect with Julie Poppleton on LinkedIn. And please remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda. Until next time, stay reflecting and keep moving in productive ways.